Welcome to the Big Screen Symposium 2018 podcast. The Big Screen Symposium took place in Auckland on the 26th and 27th of October. Please note, while many of the speakers used clips in their sessions, we've edited these out to better suit the podcast. Fremantle's Director of Drama, Jo Porter, joins Philippa Campbell in conversation to discuss her experience developing, producing and selling the trailblazing 6-part Australian television series, Picnic at Hanging Rock. Together, they explore the powers and pressures of adapting a beloved novel and the process of navigating a co-commission.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. My name's Philippa Campbell, and I'm very pleased and proud to be here today with Jo Porter from Fremantle to have a sort of conversation with Jo. She's going to do a vast amount of talking, and I'm not going to say very much at all.
That wasn't the agreement.
And just one of the things we're going to attempt to do, so if I don't see you, we're going to work through a bit of a timeline of the production of Picnic at Hanging Rock. And I thought at various stages we might sort of open the session up for your questions, so you don't have to sit there desperately waiting to ask a question about development in 45 minutes. So we'll try and make it a little bit organic in that way, but there will also definitely be time for questions at the end. So Jo is the Director of Drama at Fremantle since she's been there since 2012. A few little Kiwi connections in there, especially in terms of actors.
Yep.
With Danielle Cormack and Wentworth.
And Robbie Magasiva.
And Robbie Magasiva, both of whom we miss. How
Sorry.
dare you, yeah.
We're just on loan.
But also Wonderland,
Yeah.
which you co-created before
Yep.
Fremantle.
Yep.
So many, many years of television creation and production, and also now running a company slate for television. But we thought we'd start off, unfortunately I missed this morning, but Jo was there and was being very inspired by the provocation of the conference, tuning into the zeitgeist. So just to start off with that, how does that for you, since this morning, relate to Picnic at Hanging Rock and the adaptation?
It was a really inspiring opening couple of keynote speakers. I'm sure we all agree. It was just really interesting to hear what framed them and what drew them to tell the stories that they're telling as filmmakers. For us, it was zeitgeist in two ways. There was the economic climate that was informing the choice of the sort of programs that we were wanting to make. In Australia, we're seeing that for our local broadcasters, the number of episodes, the types of shows that they're commissioning is being reduced, and they're looking to do big, noisy, splashy pieces of content that more and more have international partners. So that, as a producer, it draws your eye to the sort of stories and the sort of the ambition that you might have to bring a piece to screen. But then from the creative and the storytelling part, we really felt that when we looked at what was a story such as the novel Picnic at Hanging Rock, which was written back in '67 by Joan Lindsay, we felt that there was something that you could really say that was fresh and meaningful about that novel, framing it in the conversation that we were having, really about female identity and women's role in society. So, and that's just, as we all know, just growing and growing and growing with the whole Me Too movement as well. But so it felt like all of us were all informed, whether it's for cultural reasons, that wonderful story from Africa and how powerful that film was and what that meant, to as a white woman looking at how the stories that I can tell that I feel can make a contribution to the conversations that we're having at home, and also that will travel and will be meaningful abroad as well.
That take ideas from Australia to Australians and enlarge their view of themselves, and also then internationally, because it is such a quintessential. I mean, it is. It could only come out of Australia. It's so interconnected.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you've all heard, that the idea of something that has an incredible local specificity to it, but that speaks to a global truth. And I think that's what's really working for us, that aren't playing in America or England, that we can, as content creators, bring to the world, which I think is quite unique.
So I'm going to start where you start with this.
Yeah.
So we're going to whiz through 3.5 years of Jo's life.
Benjamin Button. Let's age backwards.
And I found this really nice quote from Joan Lindsay about the book, because kind of the first pitch, I think we won't go through all the pitches, but I counted out there were like about 8 to 10 different pitches to different kinds of people, different kinds of organisations, financiers, keycast, whatever it is you went through that 3.5-year process.
That's true.
So the first one is to the estate who have the rights. And I really love this quote from Joan Lindsay, because I thought, gosh, this is a really kind of like this is a big deal. And I'm interested in how you developed that, what you said to the estate. So this is a quote from Joan. I wrote the book as a sort of atmosphere of a place, and it was like dropping a stone into the water. I felt that the story, if you could call it a story, there's a provocation, that the thing that happened on St. Valentine's Day went on spreading out and out and out in circles. So when you went to speak to the estate, what did you say?
We used a metaphor of a doll's house, and that the college, that idea actually, that the inciting incident, the disappearance in the rock, and the secrets that were then exposed as a result of that. For the estate, they'd been approached many times before for an adaptation, and the big thing that they were absolutely locked on was the period in which it was set. People were making pitches for making it a more contemporary version and so forth. And we also felt very organically that it could only be set in 1900. 2 reasons around that. It was the year before Australia was federated, and so I think for Australia it was a time of identifying in a white culture of our identity. And also it was just around the time of the female vote. And so for women and their own sense of emancipation, that was also, it would have had, I don't think there was an accident that she chose to set it in 1900. Yeah. I think both of those 2 factors were part of it. And Barbara Mobbs, who is the estate holder, that's who we had it to make our pitch to, and she loved it. And it was, from that point on, I have to say, even though, spoiler, there's many bumps along the way, it had an incredible energetic thrust towards being made and to getting to the screen. And it drew a lot of talent and creatives to it.
And who was the we at that point?
It was myself and Anthony Ellis, who was a writer who was part of our internal team at Fremantle. And then we brought in a group of writers, Alice Addison and B. Christian, who went on to become the lead writers. And they sort of broke it out and sort of made a pitch that we then took to the estate holder.
Okay. And it didn't take very long for you to get the rights.
No. She came back really quite quickly, and we were on tenterhooks.
Yeah.
And we were just so delighted. And any time you tackle something that's so beloved, you're very aware of, you've got a bit of a target on your back because people have an attitude towards it. But we just sort of reassured ourselves that we loved this book, and in our interpretation of the book to bring to screen for television, that we would try and honour it and the whole way along. And that was sort of really our North Star throughout the whole process.
It is terrifying, isn't it? There is that don't stuff it up kind of terror.
Yeah. There is.
And challenge.
Always. Every day getting out of bed. Right here. I took... And some people, because the Peter Weir adaptation of the book into that, an incredibly important Australian film that really helped define ourselves on our screens.
And that was 1975. So
that's right. And so we felt, that people were saying, oh, why would you touch it? And the big note we've just kept coming back to is we're not touching the film. We're not remaking the film. Why would you? But we felt that there were things to be said about the novel that he couldn't explore in a film format, and that in the interpretation that we were making in 2015, we had different things to say. Very consciously, we put around it with creatives was a predominantly female-led team. All our writers were women. Our producer, Antonia Barnard, a woman, obviously, and other key crew as well. Because again, that felt for us something. It was written by a woman. It's a story about women. It felt like it was a way to sort of bring a different, I don't know, authenticity or a different interpretation.
Different
Female
vision.
gaze was an idea that we used throughout too. And director was female. Lead director was female too.
So after you got the rights, you had a brainstorm. You brainstormed a series outline.
Yep.
We had a conversation a few weeks ago when Joe was in Australia. One of the things you said, which I scribbled down, was development is everything, and I underlined it. I think you said it a couple of times. So, and I think it's really helpful for us. I mean, just to acknowledge also that Fremantle, as a company, has the capacity to back its own development, which I imagine, you would have had to have pitched it into Fremantle.
Yep, we
at
did.
Some point.
Into our London office, and they were so excited. They were so right behind us from the get-go. And often, so we'd taken it out as a space to broadcasters, that the few that we felt could meet the scale and ambition of what we wanted to do with this. And they were intrigued, but they couldn't quite believe that this quite slim little volume could be made into what we always felt was going to be 6 hours. So the challenge was on to us to sort of show them that, but we didn't want to enter into a development deal with them that may have constrained our ability to tell the story the way we felt we wanted to tell it and be tied up to them. They often have first and last matching rights, as you probably know. So we backed ourselves, and we developed a Bible and sort of plotted out the whole 6 hours, and we had B. Christian write the first hour of the
So that's
piece.
quite, I won't ask you for the figures, but that's quite a lot of development commitment from your company.
Yep.
To give yourselves the freedom to get to a stage where you can act when you know the vision, and then you can express it to other people.
And look, you wouldn't do that on every project, but we believed in this one so much, and so we were prepared to back ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's quite an interesting point to make. Yeah. And the first episode, how many people were involved in this first writing? There were the 2 writers that ended up working on the whole series.
So B and Alice were in the writer's room, also with Anthony, who's a writer as well. In fact, he's worked in New Zealand, Mirror Mirror, years ago. With Posey. So they went away, wrote the scene breakdown, and it came back really quickly, which is always a good sign. She just found it. She found the voice, and B is a playwright by background, and her poetry in the way she paints with words was such a good fit with Joan Lindsay's. We often called it, at times a mood poem, because that's where, or an enchanted chiller, because that was.
That's nice.
Yeah, we like that one too. I use that a bit, but because so much of a thriller is what your own mind projects. Like we were hearing today about, the ghost story, a ghost story about what you project onto that with your own experiences.
So there were 3 writers doing that first series brief, and then B went off and wrote the first episode.
Yep.
And you took it to the broadcasters at that point.
Yep.
And got a commitment from Foxtel.
Yeah, Foxtel came on really quickly and said, yes, we love it. And that was where I felt at the time that was the best home for it within Australia. They really understood, and like, their ambition is to make Australian content that sits along the best in the world, and hey, that's what we wanted to do too.
And
and Penny Wynne, another great Kiwi. Well, so she was a great supporter of it from the beginning.
And from our experience on Top of the Lake, Foxtel were also wanting to position themselves as the home of premium drama.
Absolutely.
So that was absolute timing for their ambitions and what you and I were doing on different sides of the city.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because that's a commitment from a broadcaster, isn't it?
It is. But then, that's part of the finance pie, and then you've got to then bring in everybody else and get the money up to the... This was, for me, I've come out of a TV background that is much more of an episodic nature, and this was a budget that was 3 times the sort of budget that I would be used to dealing with, and it needed that. It was a 100% location shoot, and we knew that because of the mood poem, the visuals that are so much a part of the storytelling on this one, it needed a much more filmic approach to the storytelling. So that needs time, and that needs money to fund the time.
Did you hit on, or did B hit on the structure, I've only seen 2 episodes, so I'm not going to do lots of spoiler alerts, and I didn't have time to do the binge. But this won't ruin anybody's enjoyment of the series. But the sort of flashback structure, where the mystery is established, and then you flash back to explore psychological
implications
of how people got to that situation.
Yeah.
Was that an early discovery of how to go about retelling the story?
Yeah, it was also back to that idea too of the pebble in the pond, and then seeing it, how it impacted on the 5, 6 main characters, and what the secrets that exposed of themselves, and you got to know, you'd peel it away and you'd get to know more about each of them, and that their true, we would always say that The Rock would expose their true self.
Yeah, that's the thing about genre, isn't it? And that's what The Rock has to do as the mysterious, force, I suppose. Yeah, it's useful, isn't it?
Yeah,
forcing yourself to kind of think: is that actually the truth, or are we exposing enough?
Yeah, and B would always argue there are multiple truths too.
She sounds pretty fabulous.
She's very fabulous. We love working with her.
Okay. So you began, where am I on the timeline? We're in May now. So we're a year since the beginning. This is 2016. You begin writing the remaining 5 scripts.
Yep. And so we took that before, at about that same time. So we're now gearing up for, you're working towards, a date on a calendar that your commissioning broadcaster is sort of saying to you, I'd love it to be on air, blah. So you kind of work your production schedule back from that, don't you? And as part of that, we went and had some initial conversations with US broadcasters because we felt, and our London office, our head office for distribution, felt really confident that this was going to be a show that had huge international appeal. And we had great meetings, and we were able to share with them Bee's beautiful script. And they were really interested, but we didn't yet have those other 2 crucial pieces in place for them, which is the director and in particular the cast that they can hang off their marketing of the show around. And so they wanted to wait.
They would wait until you got...
They wanted us
Who was more important, the director or the cast?
Yeah, the chicken and the egg. I think it's you've got to have a director that is going to be able to bring you the cast.
Yeah,
I think is ultimately how the cards would fall. But sometimes if you have written to every show's different, but sometimes if you have written to a particular actor and you've got them on board early, they may help you bring in the director that they love working with.
Yeah, so it is a chicken and egg. Okay. How many? I'm skipping over the financing a little bit.
Yeah,
but I think it's helpful for us to know how many different financing partners you had going into official pre-production, because I know there was another one joined.
Yeah.
So how many parties did you have contributing to your budget?
The finance model was pretty standard for any Australian drama. So there was the broadcaster who would take both a licence fee position and an equity position. Soft money from tax rebates, investment from Screen Australia, our peak film body, and our local state agency, Film Victoria, who were they saw this as a very important story for Victoria. We actually were approached by South Australia, and we genuinely considered... the film was shot there. So,
wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, and they made a very compelling argument to bring us there too. And I think in many ways the deals on offers were similar-ish. Film Vic went very aggressive, but it also felt that this was actually a way to differentiate ourselves from Weir's film by shooting it 100% in Victoria and using those locations that were there.
Okay. So just quickly, any questions till now? Tina's just asking to find out a little bit more about how the writers were selected and engaged.
They've got to want to do it, and it's got to be a book that they want to spend their time working on. You look at people whose previous body of work would fit within where you're wanting to take it. A factor is often, does a broadcaster back them too? And is a broadcaster going to be comfortable that they're going to have the capacity to bring something to screen? And, you've got to want to go on the journey with them too. So it's all those factors that sort of come in, and sometimes availability too. But we were really, really lucky on this one that we had so many people come to us wanting to be part of it, and we were able to have exactly the people of our choice.
I would imagine there would be a bit of a line of people being
It was
on
amazing.
your door.
I've never experienced anything like it before.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Any other questions for me? Yes.
6 episodes. Was that a network dictate?
No, that was our feeling from the get-go, yeah. But to get to be able to confidently say 6, we had broken it out to sort of know and portioned where we felt the story would go over the hours so that we knew. Like, I think had we looked at that and gone, which has certainly happened to me on other projects, you look at it and you go, nah, you know what, it's bigger or often smaller because you want to just really make it so tight. Yeah.
It is bold, isn't it, going from that slim volume to 6?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in the book, there were so many clues that Joan Lindsay left behind. I always call it like these little threads that the writers could sort of tug at and outward tumble all these questions, actually, that they could use to inform potential backstory and also where it was going to go. So she left a lovely lot of crumbs for them to sort of pursue.
That's good, until they got to the witch's house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The rock.
Exactly. Okay. So October 2016, and we sort of got to that in this process of putting your financing together and getting your market elements together.
Yep.
Because here is a show that is full of ambition. One of the more ambitious shows, or ambitious in a different way for Fremantle.
Oh, I think for scale, the most ambitious
and
that we've had to
international
date.
impact. I mean, Wentworth is being remade in God knows how many languages, hugely successful. But this is a different kind of scale, isn't it?
It is, and so we needed to bring to it directors that would be meaningful to, in particular, a US broadcaster.
Yep.
But also had the ability to often had a filmmaking background. And my preference was that it was a woman, because I just again felt that just gave us something new to say. So that became a bit of a process of elimination, and they also had to be approved by a broadcaster. So you've got all those things that you're juggling, and availability as well.
And how did you hit on Larissa?
She was introduced to us by a colleague who had came across from Sundance, who just joined our company, a guy called Christian Vesper, who had been tracking her career in the States. He loved her. What did he call it? It was a really good description, her muscular approach to direction. So even though this is a film about women, of TV series I should say, women in white dresses that could be gauzy and sort of breathy and stuff like that, he loved that with her characters, and I think he was right, that she really made them more muscular. So it was like sort of quite gutsy, so that these became, and I think in so doing, they became a more contemporary woman, actually. So it had more relevance for a contemporary audience. They weren't just delicate creatures bouncing through the bush. They were strong women. And actually, that was how Joan Lindsay wrote them. So it didn't feel like it was a deviation from the book. The character of Miranda is perceived to be this sort of very ethereal, airy, wispy creature. But in the book, and certainly the way we chose to play her, she's a girl from the country. She grew up around horses. There's passages where she jumps down off the buggy and opens the gate. So
very physical.
Yeah,
and
there were real clues
very,
there.
Very real capability, physical capability.
Yep. And then so Larissa had that, and she'd also worked on big American TV series that were all about visual storytelling.
And how did she respond to the material?
And she loved it. So she was a Columbia University grad, so a complete film nut, knew more about Australian film than me, lots of people, and loved it, and was just, she wanted it. She really, really wanted it. So that was also great, because you want someone, because it's tough. So to go on the journey of, this was a very physically demanding shoot too, she wanted to do it.
And it created a controversy.
It did. So we didn't set out to hire a non-Australian in that role. in actual fact, we went through quite a few Australians that ticked those boxes that I mentioned earlier. But some of them I couldn't, there was a couple of respectful passes because they felt the legacy of the film.
It was too much.
Yep, and I respect that. And then others I couldn't quite get them over the line for an international having meaningful enough credits at that particular time for international or for our domestic broadcaster. So I felt that, or we all felt that if this was a way to elevate and give us the chance strategically to take she was only going to direct 50%, always only going to direct 50% of it. So it felt it was a way to she could take us with her into an American marketplace. So there was that was also part of the strategy behind it.
Yeah. And it was, I mean, it's interesting just politically in terms of the above the line that your writers were absolutely fundamental to the success of the series. And they could show the quality of their work right from the get-go so that there was no question.
No.
But realising it is another whole other negotiation for you with your financing partners.
It is. And on that, the back to, I said earlier, the magnet of the script, she just loved Bee's writing. And that was just, oh my God, it was amazing for her too. So I wanted to honour that and, bring it to life.
Bring it to the screen, yeah. Okay. So she's there and the controversy begins.
Yep.
And it was very hot. I mean, Australia's a much more vigorous culture. It must have been really difficult. I
It
can
was
imagine if I
heartbreaking.
was in your situation, I would have hated
It was really tough because look, going back again, I think we could have done our messaging better with other stakeholders. I understood why people were concerned. I think the other thing that happened at the same time, and this was the hard bit for me on a personal level, was it was the real rise up of, Hillary had just lost the election in America. It was November. And so I think women were furious, and I was too. And so it morphed into an issue about Australian women, and the frustration for me was I always wanted a woman in that role. And so, yes, Larissa was not Australian, but she was a woman. And so it became quite messy in that unpicking. And so the criticism around the female part of it, I found personally upsetting because it's something I just believe in so strongly.
Yeah, and have actually acted on. Yeah, okay. But she stuck, I mean, she was there.
Well, yeah, it was tough on her because
And
it became very,
on her.
very personal and embarrassing because trades were picking it up in the States and, it was embarrassing.
So that's a kind of heightened situation to begin all the work and all the collaboration with an enormous crew, Australian crew too. And I can imagine that was interesting and complex.
Yeah.
Okay. And you cast Natalie Gilmore in January.
Yep.
We're nearly at the first day of principal photography, guys. Don't worry, we're getting there.
How are we going?
We're doing all right.
She was right. Yep. We are going to need 7 minutes.
We are going to, quite easily. And so you've got your director, the director and the script bought
Natalie.
Interest from Natalie.
Yep.
And did you have many respectful passes from other actors before you got her?
There was a couple.
Right. Yeah, it's quite hard, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. How long did it take to find her?
A couple of months.
Yeah. Oh,
it's
that's
also
not too bad.
windowing. And, the other thing that we've got to accept is not everybody, people have partners, children, dogs, and they don't always want to leave them behind and come to our neck of the woods for
a long time.
Yeah, it was like 3 months.
Yeah.
So
it's really different from...
It's not nipping across to Europe and you can jump home on a weekend.
Or 10 days on a movie. Or
it was a big time commitment.
Yeah. Oh, but so she obviously didn't have partners' dogs.
She did. She had a partner and a dog.
Okay. Did you meet them?
I met the partner. He was lovely.
That's good.
And the dog, I'm assured, is very charming
I'm
too.
sure.
Yeah.
you probably saw photos of the dog.
I did see photos of the dog.
Okay. I was interested And already it's in the timeline that Joe did for me, it's fascinating because there's already, it's partly where you are now with it, but the pressure of marketing is something that you observe through this history, where the marketing internally, and presumably also because you did hit the front pages as a bit of a scandal, so it was important to regroup and find a way to take the story back to its audience, I guess.
That's true. I think that the first part of it, I mean, I hadn't thought of it the way you'd said it at the beginning, or the number of times you pitch a story and you never stop doing it right through till you take it to your final audience, being the viewers. But the next step for us was so we were almost ready to go and needing to bring on an international broadcaster. So we had these beautiful scripts. We had all 6 of them by then. We had Larissa on board, who was, she's now done a deal with Amazon. That's how she's got an overall deal there. HBO adore her. It was a bidding war for her. So they all were really confident and loved her visual style. She did a lookbook too, I should have said too, that really broke out the visual language of it all. And of course, it had then placed Natalie Dormer as our lead. So then it was, okay, but you're still in Australia, who are you? A little bit, really. And so what we decided to do after 10 days of shooting is we cut a reel, and to show them, no, we're not just making this up when we say it will have scale and it will look like this. This is what it's going to look like.
So who cut that for you? Was that a special trailer cut in marketing, or
it was
one
Larissa.
of your editors? Oh, it was Larissa.
Yeah, Larissa.
She was busy.
Oh my God, she did not sleep, that woman.
Wow.
It was Larissa and a assistant editor actually cut it at night.
Yeah.
And so on the strength of that
Yeah.
and conversations with Larissa, Amazon came on board, which was brilliant. And at that point, it meant that we could expand our shoot even further and really just work to deliver the production values that they were demanding and we wanted to do.
And you wanted to do, and you probably were worried enormously about your budget.
Yes.
But we won't go into that in great detail. So these are the statistics that you've given me. 13 weeks main unit shoot.
Yep.
7 weeks of a full second unit shoot. That's a lot.
Oops.
2 weeks shooting on a country location, 23 locations, 131 main unit full-time crew, and 71 cast.
Yep. Some days you'd go to set when there were some of the bigger scenes and it looked like a football match, the car park in terms of the number of cars. It was like, oh my God.
It just makes me
I know. The
feel
production
tired.
office were extraordinary. Yeah, they really were. Yeah.
That's a lot.
And I think it was a 100% location shoot.
Yeah.
And Jo Ford was our wonderful production designer. And she and her team found all these incredible turn-of-the-century locations that they would dress into, but they were often historic houses, so it meant you couldn't attach stuff to walls.
Which had bang in something.
No, but even like light stands and stuff like that, you had to be so careful. So it was a really fragile, and we were so lucky to shoot there, but it was tricky.
And did you shoot it just from a scheduling point of view? Did you shoot in blocks?
We did, but so
or
it was
shoot it location by location?
it was going to be 2 blocks, first 3 and back 3, but then Larissa's ambition was greater than our original schedule. But she got these gorgeous images, and that was what was getting them in. So we backed her and supported her vision there, and so that did mean at some point you had both crews.
Right, that was one of the reasons why you had 2 crews.
And also we had a heart out for Natalie Dormer, so we had to just bring them in, get them in. Yeah.
How many first ADs did you have? Did you have someone scheduling and rescheduling and then
Sometimes
2 people
we
out
did,
on the road kind of thing?
Yeah, we did at one point, yeah. And Brett Popperwell, who works for us at Fremantle, but he came on and he stepped up and became a producer with me on it. His background is originally as a first, so he was able to sort of really help give big picture on that too.
And presumably you were cutting the cutting room was going from day one?
Yep.
2 editors?
one editor because at the
Right,
well, so there
at
was
the
ultimately
beginning.
there was two,
Yeah.
but yeah, so the first editor was working behind Larissa's rushes, and then
Yep.
we had both of them going.
And
at the
how
end.
many assistants? One each? Like,
No, there was just one
One
very
assistant?
hard-working assistant.
wow. Okay.
Have to save money somehow, but no, I think we did end up getting two at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
When she was falling down, boom. But no, she was amazing.
And you did this is a producerial question, you did a marketing and stills shoot
Yep.
towards the end.
Towards the end.
Was
yeah.
that a complete pain in the ass? but
Yeah, it's a
necessary?
nightmare, but you have
Yeah,
to do it.
yeah.
And because also, you try and do it. I think that's the other thing that's happening more and more in our industry for film, TV, I should say, which is more of a thing that for filmmakers you'd be used to. But the importance of those key art images to sell your show, particularly in a VOD environment where decisions by consumers to press play is a postage stamp on their screen. And so it has to be such an arresting image that sort of somehow is a storytelling tool too and synthesises the show down to that one little thing. So we're lucky with Fremantle, we have a big internal marketing team, and they'd worked with Amazon previously on American Gods and knew that you can get lost in the slipstream because they're commissioning so much stuff. So we did a lot of stuff ourselves. And they came up with their own key art that was used everywhere. The idea of that was this sort of, there's a psychological thriller aspect to it within her. Mm.
And that's a thumbnail. Ooh, that's very arresting, that image.
Yeah, it slows down the eye.
And I mean, it's interesting to note, I mean, you work for a big company, I'm an independent producer, but have only made something big within the support service of a company, bigger company. That support's terribly important, isn't it? So if you're working independently, you need to find that, you need to bring people in and have the resources in order to work at this level. Yeah. It's really tough.
It is tough. I think you can get gobbled up and you've got to try to hold firm on what you back to the pitch, what message that you're wanting to try to take through. And it was also really interesting, and I know Jane was the same on Top of the Lake, but as an auteur, they want their vision to go the whole way through. Because I know you were saying how across photography she was too. In just, she doesn't want some dodgy still to sort of represent
her. It just wouldn't happen.
No.
It's not an option.
No.
Well, which is, I mean, just going through your experience and thinking about, the great advantage in having the recognised auteur. She was our card. We could always play the Jane card, if you like. And you had a more collaborative, adaptive card and a vision that came out from the book through the scripts. Then with your lead visionary director. And it was her, and she's a creative consultant or something on the way. So clearly she was over.
She stayed through the very end. And through to...
Had you imagined that would be what happened, or was that just something that evolved?
No, because in television, the sort of TV that I'd made is that a director would normally not have that sort of cradle to grave involvement. That's much more of a film model. But I think it was great. We really benefited from her obsession over detail, and particularly visual obsession over detail.
Did you shoot the scripts?
Yep, pretty much. It was interesting. I went back and looked just the other day. We had to submit EP1 for something, and even though we absolutely changed, as you usually do, changed a lot around structurally, actually across the whole 6, because it is a completed piece. We did move bits around. It pretty much held together.
And you go back and forward in time all through. It's got a very complex flashback structure. And series producer, can you just talk a little bit about how that role worked, or script producer?
For B, Christian?
Yeah, for B.
So then as changes sort of came through, it became clear that we needed, and I think in the cut process too, around additional dialogue, voiceover and all the rest of it, it became clear you needed to have the one voice. So whilst Alice did an amazing job of writing EPs 4 and 5, we needed just a burnish across them all, just to sort of really keep that
So she
same
was
voice.
there to hold the hold the heart
Yep.
and to keep the vision
Yeah.
clear from a scripting point of
Yeah.
view. And
In
so
the cut.
was in the cut, but also was she sort of rewrite HQ during the
Yeah.
shoot? Because
Yeah.
things always need to get
They
rewritten
do.
for various
They
reasons.
do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was her role.
Yep. After a certain point, yeah.
Have you-
Alice took them a long way, but then
Yeah.
she did a final pass, yeah.
And is that a role that you'd worked with before?
Yeah, always actually.
okay.
That's a much more traditional television model where you would have this
Someone with the...
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. Any questions?
I had one a while back.
Oh,
yeah.
yes, go for it. Yeah.
Did you say about the first promo reel you showed us that after approximately 10 days of shooting, you put that? So was that all footage from the first 10 days of
Yep.
shooting? That was in there. It wasn't a specially designed promo
No.
reel. It was just, wow,
Yeah.
you covered some ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
that was my question.
Yeah.
No.
That's true.
Okay. Yes?
So I'm going to follow up question now. If after that 10 days and that show that gave you the Amazon and more cash, how did that blow out your planning? Or did you always have it in the back of your mind that's what you wanted to do, to be able to then go spread out for 10 days?
It meant we didn't have to claw back.
Which is a nice thing to not have to do. Thank you for that. Very well
Yeah,
put.
thanks.
Very succinct. You picture lock, actually, that's something else, because that's always sensitive. I mean, we have you have revealed some tricky things behind the scenes for us today.
Yep.
So it would be
Chapman House.
Yeah,
I should have said at the beginning.
Yeah,
but
exactly. But picture lock. Can you talk about how that worked in terms of your director, your creative consultancy, the scripts, and your partners?
Yeah, so Amazon had a cut approval as well.
As well as Foxtel.
Yeah, as well as Foxtel. So that was a shiver, I have to say. But I needn't have worried. We were lucky because they shared taste.
Right.
And so there wasn't any, because that could have been, Christ, I mean, ectoplasm on the floor. But they were of a mind, and so they really, drove it in a certain direction. I mean, there was still one episode where, for an American audience, there was some further cuts that they wanted to make. They felt there may have been an assumed knowledge around the story for an Australian audience that they wouldn't necessarily have the case of for America, which is actually helpful for all of us for international sales. And so we made a few tweaks that way that Foxtel were okay to go along with.
So you made one version.
I thought that was, particularly nowadays, you can only make one version, I think. I mean, you cut different versions, didn't you, on Top of the Lake?
Did, yeah.
I just felt that it was important that, piracy is such a thing. I wanted, unless we really, really couldn't, and it would be a deal breaker, and it's cost point too, I really wanted to just make it to be the show.
Yeah. And how did they deliver their notes to you?
Email and phone calls.
Email and phone calls. Nobody came out.
No, they didn't actually. So I had the whole relationship with Amazon was phone and email.
Okay. Did that work?
Yeah, it did. They were very good at it. I've subsequently got to know them, and they were very helpful notes. They actually, it was interesting. Amazon had a very specific system where you had to upload your episodes through this sort of portal of theirs, and at the same time, you had to do almost like a chronology timeline with time code against it, and so they could go in and with their notes benchmark against that and give you notes. I'd never seen anything like it before.
Wow.
But it was actually kind of cool.
That would be quite helpful.
Yeah, it was.
Actually. Yeah, okay. Well, that was useful that they shared a vision.
Yeah.
Well, presumably you'd sold them the vision so well with one of your many pictures that they actually
they loved
figured
the
it
scripts
out.
and they wanted to go, always honour the script. So if directors maybe took it some ways slightly differently, we could all just bring it back to the script.
Yeah, which is helpful.
Helpful.
Very helpful.
Follow up to that idea. Was anyone watching Davis outside the production?
Mm-hmm.
So that was going.
Yes. Foxtel and Amazon. Yep.
Did you get any sort of nudges through that?
There was some moments that didn't make it to the final cut.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But but I think they were pretty excited by it too, I have to say. But yeah, there were some moments where it was I don't think we ever went back and reshot something, for example. I can't think of a case of that. But
Okay, so you screened at the Rock, which must have been extraordinary.
yeah, it was. It was so cool. So Foxtel, who are brilliant. So I think that's the thing with your partners, your broadcast partners, is you want them to have the ambition for the project, same as you, but you also want them to have the capacity to help you take it to market. And I have to say that's where Foxtel are also amazing. They really know, they back their projects and they spend money on their campaigns, and they really did a big splashy thing. So we had they trucked in all these journalists from around Australia, from all the media, and the plan was to have a tour and then a picnic at the base of the Rock in these gorgeous tents. But the Rock had its magic and blew the tents away. And so we had it inside. But that was a terrifying moment for me because at that very same place, we screened episode 1. So there we were in a room full of journalists around the country. Yeah. No one had seen it before. So, I mean, my heart was just in my mouth the whole time.
And was it completed?
Yeah.
So it was
finished. But it was like a room like this, not proper lighting. I'm just like, oh my God, and lights hitting the scene. So I'm sliding off my chair, going Jesus, and the colour was all off. Anyway, we got an amazing first review, and so that's exactly what you want, because it's the taste maker. And then I mean, people are going to say what they want, and they did, but generally they all lined up behind that first review, and that was how they framed it.
One other sort of slightly backwards question from me too. When did the composer come on board? Because the sound, because it is a what was your wonderful phrase? Chilling.
Enchanted chiller.
Enchanted chiller. All the building of the atmosphere and the kind of dynamic of how that works is really specific to this, and the melding of kind of timeless and very modern. So were they?
Cesare, no, he didn't come on till post. We had someone who was going to do it, and then for other reasons had to step away.
Right.
So it would have been better
to have someone earlier.
Totally.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, we had some rotten luck. Our beautiful sound designer, who had been there from the very beginning, recording all these really arcane sound effects, he died.
Oh.
Yeah, it was such a loss to the industry. He was a brilliant man, and so we had to start again there too. Yeah.
That must have been terrible.
Oh, it was, terrible for him and his family.
Yeah. Okay, because I mean, it is a very, when you see it, I mean, it is very distinctive. So, question?
I'm really proud of the sound design. Cesare, amazing. Yeah, I know, he's extraordinary. And he worked with his son, Jan, as well, and did some of the work too. And, I think the score and the soundscape is something else on this. It's just the detail.
It's very detailed.
They were just the most extraordinary team. They would just go again and again and again, because it was just, for them, it was such a chance to be so... I mean, sound is always a part of the storytelling, but it was really front and centre in a lot of ways. So their moment to shine.
And just skipping to the end, your international stuff started in Berlin in terms of so that was about presenting to a European audience, so getting critics.
Yeah, so we that was fun. So we were selected to open the television section of the Berlin Film Festival, which was so cool and fun. And
all 6 episodes?
No, we screened the first 2.
Yeah.
And that same day, Deutschland Telekom, I should say, were our German broadcasters, and so they did a big launch around, because they had all the cast. We had a lot of the cast over for that, and it was so great. So we'd had our Australian response to it, and I was really so relieved, thrilled, excited. But then you think, oh my God, how's it going to go internationally? And so the next day after we'd had this screening, and you sort of feel, I mean, as a TV producer, this was so much more of a film experience to have this sort of afterlife of marketing around the world, and I'd never experienced it before. And so you had this screening, and it was well received, and there was lovely buzz and feedback in the room. But then it felt really flat, well, that was it. And so, but then the next day, just before we flew out, the Hollywood Reporter it was a Hollywood Reporter review came in, and it was a ripper. And so it was like, oh my God, how fabulous that it worked internationally as well. And it was
when you have a glass of champagne at the airport.
We did,
yeah, I bet.
and it was so beautiful to be able to share that with Larissa was there and the cast, and just sort of go, my God, because it was bloody tough shoot.
Yeah.
It was worth it, maybe. Yeah.
Maybe.
No, it was. It was. Yeah, no, it was.
And Tribeca.
And then we went
and that was the American.
That was the American launch for Amazon, and then Variety were very kind to us as well.
Yeah.
So that was good.
Yeah, I mean that's all kind of online. I read this somewhere, which I thought was fabulous, and I wondered what you thought about it, and I hope this is going to make you want to watch it. I mean, the tone of this series is really distinctive, and I know how hard it is to do that and to have it feel organic, and it really does. The fact that it's layered so beautifully, and these are not my words, but somebody described it as an Alice in Wonderland psychedelic gothic bush aesthetic.
And can I tell you, I think Larissa has that on a T-shirt. She loved that quote.
Well, I think as the person who started it all off and who's talking about it with us today, I'd just like to congratulate you, because that's a wonderful thing.
Thank you.
Thank you. So any questions? Any other questions?
I've been told all the time that period dramas are hard to fund.
Yep.
Is that true? And if it is, what do you think got you through?
I think that is true. We're always told that they will only take maybe one a year, a lot of them, because they feel that it's a barrier to entry for younger audiences in particular, is the wisdom. But I think for us, it was about young girls, and I think we didn't want it to be a static version of the period. We wanted to make it a visceral experience of being a young person in the time, and even with dialogue and just the approach. So we tried to make it feel more alive, I guess,
Very
rather than
immersive.
static.
Yeah.
Yep.
Relating to that. So do you think that was in the pilot script? Because as
Yep.
soon as you see the visuals, you understand, but that
Yep.
field was something.
Yeah, I believe so, yeah. It just the language and the way she approached it.
Yep.
Subtitles in German? For Germany?
Oh, I think they dubbed it. Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
Not at the screening. Not at the screening. It was just in English, actually. Now that I think about it, yeah, it was just in English.
So when you delivered it, was it just as is?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it was. It sort of goes down dark wormholes, doesn't it? Where they then go and dub it in different languages. And I don't know if you've had the experience. I did recently with Netflix. I was watching what's that amazing series, Babylon Berlin. And so I'd been watching it in German with the English subtitles, and it was great. And then someday, randomly, we were watching it, and it had flicked over to being dubbed in English. It was awful. It was just totally changed the experience. So I can't imagine what that does. Anyway, you're probably more used to it than we are.
Yeah,
but
they are used to it.
yeah.
Any other questions? Yes.
You may not be able to talk about this, but your deal with Amazon, did they take
No, they only took North America, which was actually for us as producers brilliant, because it meant that it played. It was a big sale to BBC Two, Canal Plus. I forget which Rai in Italy, and we said Deutschland Telekom, and financially, it's apparently on the lineup of all of Fremantle's international sales. It's one of the top sellers for them. So it's found an audience and it's made money, which is so great because it just gives them the confidence to do it again, which they are, say, with the Luminaries, right? So I think that's great for all of us, that our content in our language, our accent of English can sell, and that's really important for the next one and the next one.
you talked
Yep, some days you don't feel like you do. You've just got to try and hold your vision and just try and... It can be a bit white-knuckled at times, but I think it's... The big thing I would say about that is the importance of pre-production. We were talking about the importance of script, and I think that preparation is everything, not just for your scripts, but for everything. So that you've got to... If you go into a shoot and everyone feels that they're making the same show, you have a much, much, much better chance of that not being an issue because you're all following a vision. And so you've got, you know what you're all doing.
I'm going to ask the last question because I wanted to know. I mean, there's a couple of things that come at you from the experience of the first two hours, and then something that you spoke about when you introduced the series about it speaking to us now, which is the other thing about period material, that it's really much more about us now than it is about us then.
That's very true. Very true.
So there's a kind of queer subtext through this, at least the first two episodes.
Yep.
Which I imagine gets developed in some way or another. And then the other thing you sort of referenced was the importance of 1900 to white Australia. Where does that sit for you now with the experience of audiences in Australia and you reimagining this kind of one of the origin stories, isn't it, of modern Australia in its own way? How do you feel about all that?
Well, you can't help but, I guess, put your contemporary socialisation and understanding on the world in it. And I think, so you could be perhaps more frank about things that you maybe would be more oblique about, even in the film, I think. So we can be more honest about things. But it wasn't... we didn't try to impose or find a gay subplot. It was out of the novel itself that, B remarked, why would this young man look at this other young man getting undressed and stand next to him naked? So she felt that there was a very legitimate subtext to unpack and still only kind of hint at. It's not totally explicit, but it's pretty clear.
And that's part of all the questions that fell out of the story for you.
It's a big piece about identity.
Yeah.
How can you be your authentic self, and be that through your sexuality, your gender. It has a lot about English people being banished from their home country to come here to reinvent themselves and to run from secrets from their past. But that the truth ultimately, I think really, we would say that the truth ultimately does out.
It's a good thing to end on, I think. Thank you very much, Jo.
Thank you. Thank you.
The Big Screen Symposium is brought to you by Script to Screen and Janda. We would like to thank our event partners, the New Zealand Film Commission, New Zealand On Air, Images and Sound, Screen Auckland, and Stage and Screen Travel Services. Voiceover was provided by Samantha Dukes and music by Poddington Bear.